Hello, SICW Wrestling fans. As promised, we are back here for week 2 of our weekly update. I'm here with SICW promoter Herb Simmons, and let's talk a little wrestling.
Well, as we said, we were going to come back on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and by gosh, we're here, and we appreciate everybody joining in tonight as we take you back in time of wrestling in St. Louis. For those of you who grew up, either your parents or grandparents or yourself grew up in those days of the glory days of professional wrestling, wrestling at the Chase. For those of you who are following us that remember it, great times we all grew up with, and we want to take back tonight back in time a little bit on how it got started and what all took place back under the leadership of the late, great Sam Muchnick, who was the president of the National Wrestling Alliance for about 41 years.
Absolutely. A great time, some great memories. And where would those memories be without some sponsors? And a key sponsor back in the day is still alive today with SICW Wrestling.
Exactly. I'm going to show you back one of the first programs back in 1959 when Wrestling at Chase went on the air. Their sponsor back in the early days was Anheuser-Busch. Take a look at what the commercial was about.
Hello, everybody. Busch Bavarian, America's most refreshing beer, presents Joe Garagiola and Wrestling at the Chase. Brought to you every Saturday at 9 and Wednesday at 8 for your enjoyment. No doubt about it, you can't beat fun. Fun and Busch Bavarian. So lift a snow-cooled glass while you enjoy the show.
Well, Herb, you mentioned it. A big sponsor there, Anheuser-Busch, Busch Bavarian Beer. And just like we saw on that commercial there, at the bottom of every one of your monthly flyers, we see that Busch Bavarian logo.
Yeah, how keeping the tradition alive and the history of Anheuser-Busch back then, they help us out today. Here it is in 2019. They put their logo on our flyers and our posters for us. Our good friend Matt Brown, the sales representative from our area, has been real helpful in doing that for us. And it's just another way SICW is keeping the tradition of wrestling at the Chase alive. And we appreciate the folks over at back then Anheuser-Busch, since we're talking back in past tense, but now it's Grey Eagle Distributing, folks.
Absolutely. And you couldn't ask for better sponsors. And it's an important thing to have that, to keep the tradition of wrestling alive.
Exactly. It's, we say all along, it's you got to have good fans. You got to have the good workers, which we do in our locker room. We're going to be talking about that later on in the program. But tonight we want to tell you about when wrestling got started in St. Louis. Sam Muchnick, the genius of wrestling at the Chase, was a sports writer prior to getting into the wrestling business. But then when he got into the wrestling business, it was nothing like you'd ever seen before. Sam Muchnick, there you see a picture of him with the late, great Lou Thez, one of the all-time great NWA champions of all times. But Sam had an act of pulling this all together. He knew that there was a market for it in the St. Louis area, and with the likes of Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers and people like that were the mainstays for the wrestling at the Chase. And that's what we're doing today. In 2019, we continue that tradition that Sam Muchnick built the foundation on. And there you see Sam, and then we've got a few other slides we'll show you there of him. Him and another St. Louis legend, Harley Race, is still with us. A great champion himself. There on the bottom, you'll see in 1966, Sam Muchnick and George Abel and Koppler was signing the renewal of the contract for KPLR for the TV program to continue. You'll remember back, Larry Matisek even mentions it in his book, the original arrangements with Sam Muchnick and the Koppler family was done on an airplane. They actually shook hands and got the contract going. They said, Sam, you got the wrestlers, we got the TV. And since that's when Wrestling at the Chase started. But in 1966, they actually had a contract, and that was them signing it. And then you see Sam Muchnick there with another late, great NWA wrestler, Jack Briscoe.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about historical wrestling, just some of the names you've mentioned here, some of the pictures we've seen. And some of the legends that you continue to bring into SICW, it's great to take a listen back to hear what some of these legends talk about the days of wrestling in St. Louis and all the memories they have, that St. Louis was the place to be.
Yeah, St. Louis was the place to be, and they used to say the Chase was the place. And, you know, people like Lou Thez, Buddy Rogers, they all loved it. You know, Lou Thez used to be a special guest referee for SICW before he left us. Never did wrestle for us, but it was later on in his career. I got to be good friends with Lou, and when I needed that special guest referee, Lou would always volunteer to do that. But all of these wrestlers all had the same thing when you talk to them, all the legends. If you made it to St. Louis, you made it to the big time. Everybody wanted to work at the Coruscant room or at the KPLR studios.
So you talk about those legends. Let's take a listen to one of those legends, Bob Geigel, about his days of wrestling in St. Louis and the memories he shares from that time.
I love to wrestle in St. Louis. I wrestled some superstars here. I never wrestled Pat O'Connor or Dick the Bruiser, but I wrestled a lot of very important people. And it was always a pleasure for me to go to St. Louis. Sam Muchnick, the promoter there, did a tremendous job promoting wrestling and was probably one of the original wrestling promoters in the United States. What a nice person on top of it.
Well, there you have it, Herb, a true wrestling legend in Bob Geigel talking about the days of wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis.
Well, and you heard him talk about Sam Muchnick. You know, everybody loved Sam because he was an honest promoter. Something back in the day there wasn't a lot of them. And Bob Geigel went on later on to be president of the National Wrestling Alliance himself. But everybody loved Sam. Everybody would tell you that come time for the payoff, all the money was always there. Sam never cheated anybody. He was a peacemaker in the National Wrestling Alliance. That's why he held that presidency for a long time. You know, we talk about the Lou Theszes of the world and Buddy Rogers, those main competitors in St. Louis and anywhere they went around the country, around the world, in fact. Let's take a little look at some action between Lou Thez and the Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers.
You know, onto the ropes with Rogers. A check as he comes back off. Another one. Uh-oh. Hello. Looky here now. There hangs our Mr. Rogers there by his own volition. 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and he's out like a light. Dempsey can't get him loose. Well, here's Buddy's varlet in here. Fez says, well, all right, let him hang. Fellas, he's leaking off the edge of the mat there. You'd better get him. You just right down in with the telegraphers.
Well, there you have it, just a piece of the match. But again, a hard-fought match and not a way I would want to end up hanging from them ropes by my neck.
Well, you know, anytime Lou Thez and Buddy Rogers went to battle on there, you never knew what was going to happen there. And as you can see on that video, that match there didn't turn out too good for the Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. You know, there was only one of the Nature Boys back then, and that was Buddy Rogers. And of course, as time went on, we ended up with another one of the all-time greats, the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, who all of you out there watching tonight are real aware of the Nature Boy himself. But back then, you know, that was in the early 60s when that match, they had many of those matches back and forth up in Chicago, Kaminsky Park, places like that. But then we went forward and we've got these tapes, and we're going to be showing you more and more of them as we go on with these weekly updates. But let's jump ahead a little bit until about 1969, 70, and show you how it progressed in just that short amount of time. Let's take a look at Bob Geigel when he was in action on Wrestling at the Chase against the favorite of Cowboy Bob Ellis.
Time limit from San Angelo, Texas, weighing 245 pounds, Cowboy Bob Ellis. His opponent from Algona, Iowa, weighing 240 pounds, Bob Geigel. The referee, Charles Venator.
Well, George able to get it ringside. There's the bell. Cowboy Bob Ellis and Bob Geigel both exchange those hard rights. And immediately, Geigel climbs outside. He wants to get that wild pony a chance to calm down. You know, that's one thing I've got to say for the St. Louis Wrestling Club. They not only give you great matches at Kiel, but also on championship wrestling. How about this one? A main event anywhere. The Hairy Ape and the pride of San Angelo, Texas, Cowboy Bob Ellis.
Well, there you have it, Herb. Another hard-fought match, another battle in the ring, and even though there's about a decade difference, you see that continuation of old-school wrestling, a lot like what you're trying to continue today.
Well, and that's what it is all about. There, of course, Cowboy Bob Ellis was always one of the St. Louis favorites. I remember when he had matches down at the Social Center in East St. Louis, Illinois, down on Summit Avenue. And, of course, Bob Geigel, you've seen his career progress. He started off as a wrestler, sometimes in an opening main event, worked his way up on those matches, and then eventually ended up owning a part of the promotion in St. Louis, becoming the National Wrestling Alliance president after Sam Muchnick retired. So history just keeps on going and going. And that foundation, as I keep talking about, that Sam built and kind of moved it along. And then with Larry Matisek coming on board later on, that's just, like you said, that's what SICW is doing. We just continue to build on that legacy and those memories that is out there.
Absolutely, and that's leading into where we are today. But before we get there, let's take a look at some of the comments, some of the fans that we have on here. Andy Warner's on here with us, a great supporter of SICW and always there for anything you need. Darla Staggs is here. Again, somebody that knows as much about wrestling as many people that I know. Cliff Albert says, hi, Herb Simmons.
Well, we appreciate everybody joining in. That's what we want to do. We want to have some interaction. We want to hear you talk about your memories, especially if you grew up in St. Louis, and I know Darla, she's up in Minneapolis probably with about 3 to 4 foot of snow right now, the last I saw her posting. So it's always good to hear from Darla.
Billy Stallings says, hi, Herb Simmons. Charlie Johnson, hey, Herb. Thomas Vanderwade, hi, Herb Simmons. Darla Staggs, she loved the video clip of Bush Bavarian, and Andy replied, me too. Again, just showing old school how it's still alive today.
Well, it's clips like that triggers the memory of us folks who grew up on wrestling at the Chase. A lot of the tapes from back in those days were destroyed. They taped over them, and they ended up being tossed into the incinerator. The only reason there is Wrestling at the Chase videos out there now that we have, that Larry Matisek and I reproduced, is because back in the day he recorded them on his VCR about the size of this desk, and these almost 80 hours that we have available is because he taped them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hubert Stenson's on here with us.
Hubert the Beast, good. Thanks for joining in, Hubert. He's been in for us a couple of times. We want to get him back into SICW. He's one of the wild men.
Absolutely. Keith Smith says hello.
Keith, the legendary Smith family, 3 generations there. I spent many years at South Broadway Athletic Club with his father, Eddie Smith, referee, wrestler. Keith Smith and then Keith Smith Jr., great family, great supporters of SICW. I appreciate you joining in on this weekly show. And don't think you're going to be out of not getting over here to share some of your memories with the fans on a Sunday evening.
It'd be great to have him live here with us on a Sunday night. Michael Todd, the mayor of Millstadt's on here. We're going to be talking about a show coming up here soon in Millstadt.
Going to be talking about the fine folks of Millstadt on March the 30th. We're coming back to St. James Parish Center. We're going to talk about that as we go on. Got a big match coming up there. We appreciate the mayor joining in, the fine folks of Millstadt, Illinois. Always great fans. Several of them always come down to our show in East Carondelet, and we're looking forward to going back to Millstadt.
Dennis Kendrick says, I love the stories. I grew up with wrestling at the Chase. Thomas Vanderweed said, so do I. Darla says, this is phenomenal. Terry Riley says he's enjoying it.
Terry Riley, Tiger Terry as we call him, another guy, grew up at South Broadway Athletic Club. him and Tony Costa had match after match. Terry went on to retire, but I drug him out of the bushes and had him doing some referee work for us, and one of the all-time greats at South Broadway Athletic Club, and when he worked for SICW. I can't say enough about Terry Riley.
You guys are apparently saying good things because he's on here saying you've always been a great commentator.
Well, I appreciate that. The check's in the mail, Terry.
We talked about Darla and a little bit of snow up there. She just wanted to let you know it's actually 35.7 inches of snow for the month of February.
Wow, that's. I'm glad you're up there. Really, I wish you were back here. You ought to make the trip to Tennessee next month, and we can join up there. But I'm going down to see our good friend Bert Prentice, and you could make that trip in, get away from that snow.
And Mike Campbell says hello from Centralia.
Hello, Mike. Appreciate you joining in tonight. And we picked Sunday evening because we wanted to let all of our fans and friends kind of wind down from the weekend. And so as we move forward over the weeks and months and hopefully into the future, we can bring you these updates. We have a lot of material out there that we want to share with you. We have programs dating back to the late 30s and all the way up to the 80s of the promos that they used to do, the flyers. We'll be showing you some of them with people like Whipper Billy Watson, Gorgeous George, some of those names. I was looking through some today of Keller Kowalski, John Paul Henning. So you're going to be hearing and seeing more and more of each of those legends that were in St. Louis that maybe not a lot of younger people would remember. But I bet you if you talk to your parents, grandparents, friends, your neighbors, and say, hey, do you remember John Paul Henning when he took on Fritz von Erich? Somebody, or one of the names that I don't know how I forget about it, is Dick the Bruiser. You're going to see a lot about Dick the Bruiser as we move in the next several weeks, because if you walk down the streets of St. Louis or anywhere in the Midwest and ask them who the toughest wrestler in the business back in the day was, they're going to tell you Dick the Bruiser.
And you know from my family, that's my father's favorite. Anytime we talk about old school wrestling, it's Dick the Bruiser.
Dick the Bruiser, and of course you're going to hear a lot about our good friend, late friend, Bruiser Brody, as we approach the big show in May, the Bruiser Brody Memorial that we do every year. We've already got some legends coming in. The Hands of Stone, Ronnie Garvin, is going to be here. Killer Tim Brooks will be joining us, and of course Barbara Goodish, the widow of Bruiser Brody, always graces us with her presence, and she presents the winner of the Bruiser Brody Battle Royal, and she'll do that again in May. So got a lot coming up for SICW.
Absolutely. Kyle Skynet says he's excited to catch this live. Keith Smith says he remembers hanging out with Darla Staggs when he was 8 to 10 years old while watching wrestling in St. Louis. That was just a few years ago.
Just a few years ago, but that's what I hope this program does. I hope, as the world we live in today, there's so much going on, and Larry and I always talked about it, and I want to talk about our good friend Larry Matisek, which I do every day. If we can bring a little bit of relief of that stress, and if it's talking about something that we've all shared that common bond with, and that's wrestling, then that's what we want to do. We want to give you something where you don't have to worry about, tomorrow I got to go back to work, or I got to go do this or go do that. Hopefully for 30, 45 minutes on a Sunday evening, we can bring you a little bit of that pleasure and let you sit back and just kind of relive what you either remember or what you were told. And it will trigger something, just like Keith Smith saying there about growing up and being around Darla. And Darla could probably tell you all the matches she's ever went to. She probably is. I tell everybody she was born in a wrestling match. So if we can do that, then I think Larry would be extremely happy, because this was something Larry always wanted to do, is to have some type of weekly program other than our TV show, which he was really happy for. But due to I won't say the cable channel name, for those of you who follow us know who that was. We couldn't reach another agreement with them. So our 500 episodes that we've gotten in the can, we'll do something with them, but they won't be on that cable station. But we're going to continue to try to bring you the best we can of those memories.
And you mentioned Larry Matisek. I see a Donnybrook starting in the comments here. Terry Riley says that now shows how old Darla is.
Oh, yeah. Well, Darla and Terry go way back.
the lovely wife of the promoter, Mickey Simmons, is now on here refereeing and has told Terry he needs to be nice.
Well, when the boss speaks, I listen. So, well, usually sometimes.
So let's get on to a little
Yes.
bit here. We've talked about a little bit of old school wrestling. We've seen some of those snippets. What is coming up in SICW? What does the future hold for the next month or two?
Well, we've got two big shows coming up. March the 16th, we're back at the East Grand Lake Community Center, and it's going to be a great one. The SICW title is on the line. The superstar, Steve Fender, whether you like him or not, the guy is the real deal. Trained by Harley Race. He's been in the business about 20 years now, maybe a little bit more than that. This guy, he'll do anything to win a match. And of course, he's in the TCO, the Travis Cook organization. And we talk about that all the time. He's got about 6 months left on his agreement with SICW, and we'll see what goes with. I know you're a fan of Travis Cook.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But so on March the 16th, the title is on the line, and he's going to go against the popular Billy McNeil. And I've had a lot of text messages and emails from fans saying they're really rooting for Billy McNeil. He's kind of the underdog here, but I got to tell you, that young man is really on a winning streak. He's defeated a couple of the TCO members, and I think this is going to be a match that could possibly go down as a match of the year, because with the high-flying maneuvers of Billy McNeil, I mean, this guy can wrestle and he can brawl if he has to. And, of course, Steve Fender is just an all-out brawler. This guy is a punch kick heel like you would never see. So that's going to be the main event on March the 16th, along with all the other SICW stars that will be there, and that's on March the 16th at the East Grand Lake Community Center. And then jumping forward, you mentioned Mayor Todd was on there with us. We're going to be going to the St. James Parish Center on March the 30th. I think this is our 4th year, if I'm correct, that we've helped them raise money from their fundraiser for the Millstadt Athletic Club. And we've got a match there. A cage match is going to take place there. And, of course, the King of Chaos, the fan favorite, Ricky Cruz, will get locked inside the cage with the 444-pound man they call Kowalski. And believe me, this is a match that you're not going to want to miss. Last year, these two squared off at St. James Parish Center, and they battled all over that gymnasium room. And this year, we're going to put them in that cage and lock the door. And the caveat is there must be a winner. So that's going to be inside the cage at the St. James Parish Center. Those tickets actually go on sale tomorrow at the Millstadt Village Hall. So I suggest you get there, get your tickets early, because the members of the Millstadt Athletic Club and the mayor and his staff are out pushing those tickets. They want to make this the biggest and best one they've had in the 4 years.
Absolutely. So you talk about coming up on March 16th. Let's take a little look at the action of what we can expect when the superstar Steve Fender takes on Billy McNeil in that upcoming action. Well, there you have it, Herb. You saw a little bit of superstar Steve Fender working on Billy McNeil, and I can only imagine what that's going to be continuing like on March 16th back there in East Carondelet.
Well, and you saw it right there. Those two guys, they're going to be going at it. Billy McNeil, that was a wild one there. Billy came out to help out. So it's going to be, the only way to settle that is to put them together. And, of course, the title will be on the line. Steve Fender has a lot to lose, and Billy's got a lot to gain. I mean, if he can go in there with the winning streak that he's on, he could be the one who upsets the TCO apple cart.
Well, Billy McNeil's been on a roll lately, defeated some of the best in the business here at SICW. Let's take a look back at some of his recent action and see what more we can expect from him on March 16th. A true high flyer there in Billy McNeil, and I think it's only going to get better than that. There you saw him defeating the King, Christopher Hargis. I'm very happy to see him take down the Travis Cook organization. I know you have to stay a little more neutral there. I don't think you and Travis Cook are the best of friends, but definitely I was happy to see him defeat him there.
Well, I can tell you, like I said, Billy McNeil, the high flyer that he is, you saw him right there in action coming off of that rope, getting the 1-2-3 on Christopher Hargis, the self-proclaimed king of SICW. And of course, you know, that's kind of what pushed him up the ladder to get him the title shot against superstar Steve Fender. And of course, yes, Travis Cook will more than likely be there. And again, anytime you have him around at ringside, the question is, I wonder if he'll be in that wheelchair come March the 16th. There's a lot of controversy over that. I have had some conversations with him, text-wise, email-wise, because there was some video that was some of the fans had taken of him getting up out of that wheelchair. And, of course, he's claiming that his adrenaline got to him and miraculously got him up, and he had a leg spasm and he had to move around, but we're not buying that because we have the video to show that. So hopefully between now and March the 16th, him and I will have a face-to-face and see where that's going to come to. But he's carrying around that $1,000 bounty on Flash Flanagan. And, you know, we may have to take some of that money away from him for his actions. And, you know, speaking of Flash Flanagan, I mean, there's a guy that is about up to his eyebrows with the Travis Cook organization. You put a bounty out on a guy, to anybody in the locker room that can put him out of the wrestling business, you know, it's kind of got Flash having to look over his shoulder.
Absolutely. And he made his point clear at the end of the night there on February 16th that Travis better keep looking over his shoulder. Because if Travis keeps putting bounties out, he might have to take care of that bounty on Travis Cook.
Well, and if anybody can do it, it'd be the Flash Flanagan that I know. The man is another one that just has been around for many years in the business, has traveled all over the world, and never backs down from anybody. So Travis better be careful. He may be biting off more than he's bargaining for there. And I'm sure on Saturday night, March the 16th, back in East Cronolette, we'll hear a lot more about that.
Absolutely. Let's catch up on a few of the comments here that have come in. Johnny Rocco's big fan of Kowalski. You know, you talked about him in that cage on March 30th up there in Millstadt, and that is going to be a night to remember.
Well, Kowalski is a big man, 400 plus pounds. I think last show was 444. But for a big man, he reminds me of the Moose Sholok back in the day, our Jared Blackwell, our Haystack Calhoun, for those of you who remember some of those legends' names. This guy can get in there and move. He can do drop kicks. He does it all. So the King of Chaos, Ricky Cruz, better bring his A game. And when that door gets locked, it's going to be an all-out war, I can tell you.
Yep. Novell Simmons says, hurry up and get Travis, let him go. Talk about some of the superstars on here. One member of the professionals, Marler McDarby's joining us.
Well, it's always good. You know, I don't see eye to eye all the time with the professionals, but I'm glad they're joining in here tonight. Maybe they are getting brushed up on a little bit of the history of St. Louis wrestling, like the rest of us are, kind of talking about the old times and what we're doing with SICW. You know, when we talk about SICW, we pride ourselves in the old school, as you've seen tonight, the Sam Muchnicks, the Luthezes, the Buddy Rogers, and that list goes on and on. But if you look what we've done over the years, the legends that we brought in, and that might be what we do on Sunday evening, is just go over that list, because they're way back. You know, Dory Funk has been here, Terry Funk, and the list just goes on and on.
You mentioned that. A good place to go visit, SICW.org, has a page that lists all the legends you brought into SICW.
Yeah, and we probably got to update that. We just kind of, thanks to you, we've been rebuilding the SICW.org page. So write that down. That's a good way to follow us, find out what SICW is doing, where we're going to be at, and if there's any organizations out there that's looking for a way to raise funds, we'd be more glad to talk to you about that. We've got several shows lined up for the rest of this year. We're really happy that it's repeat business. A lot of the organizations, Swansea, we're going to be going back there to the Swansea
Twice.
Fire Department.
September 28th and November 2nd.
So those are dates that we've been in Swansea, 5 years now?
This is the 6th
The
year.
6th year. See, I lose track of it. When you get older, that's one of the first things that go. But we've brought in some of the legends up there, and this year we're doing a show going back to the Belle Claire Fairgrounds, a venue that we ran back in the late 70s and 80s and early 90s. And then we ran one about 7-8 years ago there. We helped an organization, an FOP, and we had a legend in there, Cowboy Bob Orton. We're going to go in there on June the 29th of this year, and the legend we're bringing in there this year for them is none other than the master of the Brain Claw, Baron von Raschke, will be there in Belleville, Illinois on Saturday night, June the 29th.
Certainly a night to remember.
It's going to be a great night to remember.
A little bit going back here, Thomas Vanderwide says Flash should put a 5,000 bounty on Travis Cook. Terry Riley says I've got Flash's back, and here is the match to sign. Darla Stagg says she will make the trip home if you put Travis in a match against Flash.
Well, that could happen. Believe me, the way Travis is really pushing the envelope. And Flash is really about fed up with the whole mess at the last show. He pretty well spoke his piece, and I've had some conversations with Flash, and that's not out of the question. I've got about the next 6 months. Like I said, that's when Travis's negotiation clause is up, and he may not even be with SICW. He may be retiring. If he keeps messing with Flash, he may be retiring sooner
Physically retiring.
So we're going to see what happens with that deal. But that's a good idea, Darla. You know me. If I can make it happen to please the fans, that's what we're going to do.
Well, Herb, it's been another great night of talking about old school wrestling, today's wrestling, the future of SICW, where it's going. And I can't be more excited to take part in this weekly update, to keep the fans getting to see a little bit of the old school and of what SICW is continuing for the future.
Well, we got a lot going on, and we can't give it to you all at once. If we tried to give you everything, we would usually turn off the computer and go do something else. So we're going to give you a little bit each week. Dr. Drew, like I said, is going to be joining us. I've got him on another special assignment with these two big cards coming up on Saturday night, March the 16th. And, of course, the Millstock one on Saturday night, March the 30th. He's doing some research on that stuff and getting the cards lined up for me. But Dr. Drew will be joining us. And then we're going to be bringing in some of the SICW locker room. And I want them to tell you their thoughts on the old school wrestling and how it compares to what they're doing today for SICW. So you'll be hearing a lot from those guys. We'll have the King of Chaos, Ricky Cruz, join us. We'll have Keith Smith join us. We'll have Sean Benson join us. Like I said, Dr. Drew will be coming in with us. And you never know who's going to show up on a Sunday night at 8 o'clock and tell you what their thoughts are about SICW and what we're doing. It's been a great night bringing this to you. Next week, we'll bring you a little bit more. We're going to be talking probably about Johnny Valentine, one of the all-time greats in St. Louis that could walk out of the Kiel Auditorium curtain and methodically walk to that ring and get in it with his long red robe on, put his hands on his hips and do a 360 in the crowd stand for 5 to 10 minutes and just cheering for him. One of the toughest in the business, Johnny Valentine.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be a wrap up here. We want you to remember those 2 big dates: Saturday night, March the 16th in East Cronolette, Illinois. Bring your camera with you. Take your pictures. Bring the youngsters out. Tell your friends. Tell your neighbors. Come on out and be a part of it. The doors open at 6 o'clock. Bell time is at 7 p.m. As you see there, our sponsor, Busch Bavarian Beer, makes our posters for us, prints them off. And then hopefully you'll make that one. But if you can't, you get a double shot of SICW for the month of March on March the 30th. Big one in Millstadt, Illinois at the St. James Parish Center. Got a big cage match. You want to make sure you make that one. The big man Kowalski going against the King of Chaos, Ricky Cruz. So from Brian Whitaker tonight, myself, we appreciate you joining us tonight, and we hope to see you back next Sunday at 8 p.m. for another SICW update.